Now, Cincinnati Connection, connecting you to your community.
Welcome back to another edition of Cincinnati Connection. I'm your host, Sharice Gibson. So it's a first of its kind law, and it's in the state of Kentucky. House Bill 528, recently signed by Kentucky Governor Matt Bevin, makes joint custody the default when parents separate. So we want to go ahead and jump right into it. Joining us to talk more about the law is Matt Hale, Kentucky chair of the National Parents Association, and Dr. Ryan Schroeder. He's with the University of Louisville, a sociology professor. Thank you guys so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, so Matt, you consider House Bill 528 a win for families. You've been advocating for this, but there are still some who are a little concerned about the nature of the law, giving legal presumption for joint custody when it comes to divorce proceedings. So what about in cases of domestic violence, which sometimes is literally mom versus dad, their word versus the other?
Well, sure. The law has an automatic exemption from the presumption of shared parenting if there is a finding of domestic violence. So it doesn't apply in cases like that.
Okay, so you say that this is a win for parents, but can you just break down exactly why this is a win for the family structure?
Oh, sure. Dr. Schroeder will talk about some of the research in a moment, but research and common sense come together on this, Sharice, and that is that kids need both parents, and if the parents are fit and capable. And this law does have a list of 11 factors defining whether a parent is considered capable or not. So there are exemptions to protect the child. But if both parents are healthy, the courts are now presuming that equal time shared parenting is best for the children.
Now you say 11 factors. What are some of the factors that would stop this joint custody proceedings?
Well, domestic violence would obviously be one of them.
Yes.
Another would be the mental and physical health of a parent. And there's also issues related to proximity. If you have two parents who live so far apart that they really can't continue to connect, then they would not qualify for shared parenting.
So let's talk about benefits of the kids here. Dr. Schroeder, you met with lawmakers while this law was being drafted, and you testified on behalf of the law. So tell us this. You believe that there was some clear benefit, obviously, here for a child to have both parents involved in their lives.
Yeah, like Matt said here, the research is entirely clear on the benefit of, in the case of a parental separation, the continued involvement of both parents. And it's beneficial along the lines of mental health, physical health, education, behavior, all the wide range of child development outcomes. Having both parents involved is extremely important.
I think that everyone would, basically agree with you that having both parents involved is extremely important. But when it comes to the child and the needs of the child, what do we have a situation where there's a child who doesn't want to go with one parent over the other? Maybe there's a situation where I want to stay with dad, or I would like to stay with mom. What do we do in these situations?
Yeah, research has been done on that as well. And the findings show that even when children are not entirely enthusiastic about having to share split homes, that later in life they think back on it and they wouldn't do it any other way, despite the inconveniences and the friends that are split and those sort of issues.
Matt, what do you have to say to that?
Well, I think that, we need to consider the fact that sometimes children, when they make their decisions, are not necessarily making them on their own. They can be swayed by pressure from one parent or the other or other factors. And children often don't understand what's in their own best interest. But, there are a lot of children who really do want shared parenting, and it is very hard on kids to be separated and torn away from a loving parent. And that just makes separation and divorce even harder on children.
Well, while we would like to think that joint custody works best in divorce proceedings, don't you think this is more of a case-by-case basis? Every marriage is different, every divorce is different. Absolutely,
and that's a good point, Sharice. The reason why Kentucky's law is so good is that it takes shared parenting and uses it as a starting point. It's called a rebuttable presumption, and that means that's where we begin. And then we look at these 11 factors. And if the parent and child situation works within all of these 11 factors, then they go ahead and award shared parenting. So it does encourage judges to have more equal parenting time, but it gives them lots of safeguards if they see a problem.
So, do you want to add to that, Dr. Schroeder?
Yeah, I mean, this is really just a shift in the presumptions that are guiding the court proceedings, and I think that it's going to result in a lot more families having shared parenting and healthy, happy children.
So this law goes into effect, signed by Governor Matt Bevin, goes into effect in July, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, right about July 1st.
Okay, so what's been the general response? You work within organizations that it's built around protecting the relationships between families. What's the general response that you've seen?
Well, people are overjoyed. We've seen so many parents that have been through such difficult custody battles where you're pitting one parent against the other in a winner-take-all, loser-lose-all situation that are often unnecessary. And it drains the family's finances. And there's a lot of people that are saying more and more, look, we know the research is there. We know that kids are better off if they see two healthy parents. Let's make that happen.
So, I mean, this is the first of its law, and we've talked about this, the first of its kind law in the United States. Why is it that in Kentucky, this is the first time that we're seeing a law like this anywhere?
Well, I think there have been a lot of people in Kentucky that have stepped up. When the National Parents Organization did the report card, Kentucky was basically at the bottom. They were 48th out of 50. And Kentucky was particularly stressed by not getting enough shared parenting and so many parents fighting. I think that's one thing. And then the other is last year, Kentucky passed a law creating shared parenting in temporary orders while people were going through a divorce or separation. And it was extremely well received, extremely popular. And because of that year-long experience with shared parenting and temporary orders, they said we need to expand this and strengthen our laws even
And
more.
I think that's the difference that a lot of people, there was some confusion here. Some people thought that last year's law was permanent. But that was only temporary. But when you think about this year's law and this House Bill of 528, it still seems sort of temporary with joint custody. I'm guessing, yeah, while it does go to joint custody, if it's based on, you know, say the parent lives closer to the kid's school and this one lives maybe about 2 or 3 hours away, based on that, it still separates in some sort of way.
Well, you know, I think the nature of raising children and the nature of laws that reflect raising children has to change with how situations flow. So if you have a parent move far away, well, then that does change the child's situation.
Yeah.
But in general, shared parenting works well for parents. We've talked a lot about children, but it works well for parents too, because now you don't have one parent who works all day long and then comes home and is a full-time caregiver all night long without ever getting a break. This allows both parents a little bit of time to go out and maybe get some education, maybe work a second job and improve themselves. And that's a real win for kids.
So do we see this being sort of the gateway for other states to tackle on these type of laws?
Absolutely. We are really on the crest of a waterfall.
Okay.
There is so much pent-up hope among people for shared parenting. And we're seeing nationwide people are just really celebrating this law. And to watch the Republicans and Democrats come together and speak in one voice. How often do you see a law get passed where both parties tweet out the success of it passing?
Not very often. Not often. Okay, so thank you guys so much for being here. I mean, what's going on? What's next with the National Parents Organization? You guys have advocated to make sure that not only it's just shared parenting, but really for the things or laws rather that are passed that are for the benefit of the family. So what can we expect to hear from you all?
Well, I think next up would be a state like Ohio. Ohio has a C- on its report card from the National Parents Organization. It's a state that is beginning to consider improving its laws. And there are so many people throughout the country who are so hopeful, Charisse, and they're very excited about the progress that's happening. And thank you for covering this, by the way.
Well, thank you so much. And Dr. Schroeder, anything that you can add to maybe kind of ease the tensions or ease this for some people who may be unsettled about this new law?
One of the strongest findings in the research here, and the one that really stands out to me, is that shared parenting works even when parents don't get along very well.
Gotcha.
And I think that is instructive as we move forward, that even when parents fight and have disagreements, shared parenting brings them together around a common cause, and it still benefits the children.
We might hear about this in Ohio. Dr. Ryan Schroeder from University of Louisville and Matt Hale, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Charisse.
All right, we will be right back.